On behalf of the partners and staff of Workforce Systems Design, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this information to you. This originally was a presentation for the Board of Directors and the Executive Operations leadership of. Many of the board members could not attend, so this presentation of supply chain, workforce, and artificial intelligence, enhancement, not replacement, has been recorded and placed on the YouTube channel of Workforce Systems Design. You'll have 45 days to review it and make comments on it, and hopefully it'll make it into the next discussion we have with the board. The original presentation on July 8, 2022 was made as a result of the president of the company being asked by the board to present information about how artificial intelligence might impact the company. Workforce Systems was contracted to specifically look at the workforce makeup in the supply chain industry and how artificial intelligence might impact that piece. Other ways that artificial intelligence might impact the supply chain will be addressed in other presentations and meetings. Before we can address artificial intelligence in the supply chain, we thought it would be useful to review first supply chain trends in general, and then those specific to the workforce. The briefing book you were provided already covers many of these items, so I'm just going to highlight a couple that you may have some information on or some that may be new to you. Oracle Institute put together a list of 14 major trends that might impact the supply chain. Sustainability, we've heard a lot about that. You'll see it mentioned quite often in your briefing books. Essentially, this is looking at not only sustainability as the footprint that the organization leaves in the community and indeed in the world, but how things like reusable energy, recycling, and other impacts are impacting multiple stakeholders. Supply chain agility, again, you'll see information about that in the briefing book, specifically around micro supply chains and micro warehousing and fulfillment. We're already seeing some of that in our company with mobile warehousing units and flexible warehousing units, and then also microservices where you're combining services and systems in a unique way. Localized supplies, we're seeing more and more in this. Some of it's driven by the fragility of the supply chain as brought about by the pandemic, or at least it was made more aware through the pandemic. Essentially looking for regional suppliers and systems that will support what we're trying to do here in the U.S. and abroad. Increase inventory revenues. Again, you can read more about that in the briefing book. Flexible contract integrations. We're still having legal take a look at quite a bit of those for you. We're not concerned too much in this regard, except as it relates to some of the labor contract negotiations that have been held in the past 2 years. We expect to see more increased e-commerce, and in fact, that two lines of our business will be impacted by more e-commerce, and that's yet to be determined as far as whether the brick and mortar impact will be sustained. Customer centricity. This is really harkening back to some of the early 1990s, the customer is always right research. In your briefing book, you're going to see 4 case studies that were conducted by our staff of your organization, where we saw a high degree of customer-centric behaviors, and we also saw some less than customer-centric behavior and what the outcome in turn was. And you'll see the variability in profit related to those case studies. We're seeing a lot more customization, both in technology and in design of the supply chain links. Internet of Things, essentially this is connected with the next one, cloud-based solutions, where essentially everything is connected now, and you're going to see more and more of that in the supply chain. This is both positive and negative. There are also some security issues that we have the IT people looking at for you. But essentially, you can access almost any part of any supply chain if it's cloud-based or internet-based. Advanced automation, you're already seeing some of that. This is just an extension of what we saw with MHI and their manufacturing rebuild of the supply chain and how automation is impacting it. Increased visibility, this is both a blessing and a curse. People are becoming more aware of the supply chain elements, and how important it is for us to be aware of the different aspects of the supply chain. But like anytime you have anything that's more transparent, you will have people asking more questions and looking for answers to questions that they didn't know they had even 2 years ago. Where this is a little concerning is when we start to look at some of the investor groups and holding groups that might have interest in the company in the future, or may actually be looking at the company now. Improved forecasting, you're going to see a lot of that, and you're going to see it as a necessity. We'll share with you a couple examples at Amazon and Walmart, where they've done some pretty significant things based on some of the supply chain modeling from SAP and others. And it really is as a result of the last item identified by the Oracle Institute, which is AI and machine learning. Essentially, if it's a routinized activity, if it's something that you have large data buckets, and if it's something that takes up a lot of hours, either human hours or computer processing hours, you're going to see AI and machine learning utilized more and more. Which is why I believe, we'll be talking at your next board meeting about the creation of an AI task force to look at the impact on the organization and how you support other people's supply chains. There's some other trends not identified by the Oracle Institute, but by others like Gartner, MHI, and some others. One is the increasing reshoring and nearshoring we're seeing. We're seeing much more of this in the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry than we had anticipated, but we think that this is a result of what we saw with most of the supply chain activity in China and Asia related to the pandemic. We're also seeing a rise in crowdsourced delivery methods. We're seeing some interesting partnerships formed there that we'll discuss later. You're going to see more and more discussions around trucker working conditions. Some of this is going to be driven by the Teamsters Union. Some of it's going to be driven by what happened in Canada a few months back. And then finally, just as you are seeing it with your own home budgets, we're going to see the inflationary trend increases in the supply chain as it relates to just about every manner of cost, from equipment to labor, to consulting fees and such. So we were specifically asked to look at workforce trends. Your strategy folks and your environmental scanners are certainly looking at other aspects of the supply chain, but we were asked specifically to look at what are the major trends we see in 2022 to about 2027 is what we use as our end date. But you'll see in some cases we go up to 2030 with some of our trend analysis. Essentially, it's all about choice, and you're going to see that again and again and again, from employees making choices about where they want to work, to how they want to work, to how they're going to engage the employer, or whether or not they engage the employer. And this is all going to impact how we retain and recruit and how we identify workers in the future. It is going to put more emphasis on how we think about human capital in the supply chain, and how we leverage what we know and how we engage. So I know your human resources department is already looking at some leadership development activities as well as some benefits redesign. So let's just cover some of these trends. First of all, we're going to see more and more employment flexibility, meaning that, again, post-pandemic, supply chain employees, just like everyone, want more flexibility in what we're calling, or what Gartner has coined, radical flexibility. They want shorter shifts, they want more technology, they want more remote, they want more hybrid. Attractiveness is going to continue to be an issue as we look at a stressed labor market. Frontline managers are going to have to figure out how to attract employees in terms of benefits and flexibility and work structure so that they can get the talent they need in the supply chain operations, as well as retain it. And we're also seeing a higher level of sophistication with some data analytics around how much it's really costing you to replace significant numbers of your supply chain in the frontline area. In some cases, it's as much as a 1.5 factor, meaning that if you lose an employee, you're essentially over a 12-month period going to have to pay 1.5 of that salary to attract and bring someone on, orient them, enculturate them, and get them productive. That's going to be probably the greater issue we see over the next 5 years. And if you don't have a plan for that, you're going to find yourself expending a lot of unbudgeted resources to staffing agencies and to trying to attract new talent. We're also seeing a rise of digital dexterity. Essentially, the pace of technology has always been faster than operations, and it's always been faster than the supply chain typically could manage. But this is going to increase exponentially due to artificial intelligence and some of the decision-making software that's out there. And it's going to require that our employees not only be aware of this technology, but learn this technology at a much rapid pace, which means that IT and HR and the strategy folks are going to have to be working together to not only think about how they're recruiting people, but thinking about the people they're recruiting. They might not be the same people we would have recruited 5 years ago, but when we do recruit them, we've got to build in the ability to assess whether or not they can adapt to new technology, and whether or not they can leverage that technology in the ways that we might not even be aware of. Machines are intelligent and everything's connected is another trend that we're seeing. It's simply, supply chain employees will have access to technology and data that will dramatically alter the work processes they're engaged in presently. VR technology, the cloud, and connectedness, all types of connectedness will alter the way we work and collaborate. And then finally, the trend that we think is going to impact us in a pretty significant way is the circular economy. You're already seeing it in the EU. You're seeing it on the coast. Most of our operations in Florida are voluntarily doing it. But we believe by 2029, you're going to see state and federal regulation that reinforces the circular economy. Essentially, when we use a product, when we engage, when our clients use shipping and supply chain products, we're going to have to recycle those and reuse those in some way. Coca-Cola and Unilever have already been clear about their approach and how they expect us to align to their processes. So these are the major supply chain workforce trends that we see. Now let's talk a little bit about where the workforce is. So the supply chain workforce, the state of the workforce, I would call it, if you were defining the workforce stages as everything's great, everything's good, or oh my gosh, we're somewhere between it's good, but oh my gosh. We are seeing some of the delayed workforce issues that other industries, especially manufacturing, are seeing. And the picture that we're painting for you is that presently there's 11 million people in what we would call supply chain jobs. Between 2020 and 2030, there'll be an 8 to 10% growth, resulting in about 1 million new jobs by 2030. Many of these jobs will require a BS degree, or at least a 4-year degree of some type. About 70%, 67%, and about 20% will require a master's degree. We're also seeing a lot of people that we're supporting requiring some type of post-baccalaureate training, usually in Lean Six Sigma, artificial intelligence, data analytics, and we see that continuing until 2030. We're seeing some movement in the number of women in the workforce. 2021, it was about 38%. We're now seeing 41%. And we're seeing about 17% of the executives in the supply chain world female as well. This number was at 15%. It went to 17%, and now it's trending back down. And we think, again, some of it could be pandemic related, but it's something that we want to keep an eye on. And one of the things we want to be a little concerned about, especially as we talk later about AI, when we look at jobs that AI typically have an impact on as far as reducing the number of those jobs, many of those jobs are clerical, administrative, routinized, and the majority of those jobs are actually held by females. So we want to be cognizant of that as we move forward. The supply chain salary range for jobs has changed quite a bit over the past 5 years. This is data from ONET and the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can see on average for a person with about 5 years of experience, they could expect a range of 57,780 up to about 170, with the average salary being right at 98,560. There is a lot of variability in supply chain jobs, and we'll talk about that in two ways. First, from a private sector perspective, when you look on LinkedIn, when you look at the top 13 or so jobs titles that are posted on LinkedIn, realizing that these are actually live job descriptions that people have posted and they've assigned some salary to. There's more than 190,000 jobs posted as of July 2022. The data and salaries are not verified because, of course, we aren't in those companies, but these are the salaries that have been posted in LinkedIn, and we've had a staff member validate at least the top 13. This is the average of those, but again, we cannot validate the salary of each of those jobs because we don't work in those companies and we don't have access to their data. Some of the titles don't actually align to the U.S. Department of Labor job codes, or the salaries, or the ONET descriptions. So again, a lot of variability there. And the salaries represent a LinkedIn aggregation of data. So again, this is all private sector jobs posted. And if you can see quite a bit of variability in job title and salary. Inventory manager, logistics manager, logistics planner, slight differences there. Transport specialist, supply chain specialist. We're going to talk specifically about supply chain manager here in a little bit, especially as we dive into some of the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. But you can see that this is the salary that is being posted. Now, whether or not this is the average for a certain company or a certain range, we can't actually tell you. But when we take a look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, we can dive into occupation names and titles, and we'll jump into some salary data in just a moment. But so these are supply chain jobs. If you see the yellow sunshines, these are the jobs that are in a growth pattern over the next decade. The U.S. Department of Labor identifies 14 major jobs in the supply chain. You can see those here. Now, some of these also have some crossover to manufacturing jobs and construction jobs and transportation jobs. But 5 of these 14 clearly specifically supply chain jobs expect to see growth in from now until 2033 or so. So when we take those 5 jobs that are on growth projectiles, the number of jobs, so supply chain managers, there's about 150,700 of those in the United States. From 2021 to 2031, we expect to see a 14,200 increase. Present salary range is about 57 some odd thousand to about almost 170,000 again, with the average being around 98,000. As you look at the other jobs here, logistics analysts, transportation storage distribution managers, logisticians, industrial engineers, the data is here for you to review. So for the rest of our presentation, we're going to focus on the job position that we thought most impacted your organization, supply chain managers. 1, because we had good private sector data, and 2, because we had good public sector data. We're going to use that as a way to talk about artificial intelligence. But let's dive a little bit more into what a supply chain manager is. This is data from ONET. Essentially, ONET is a aggregation of workforce data looking across 17 different industries, and it breaks down each job into knowledge, skills, and abilities, or you might call those competencies if you have IO psychologists here on staff, or maybe your HR people talk about it that way. But essentially, there's an analysis done of each job that's posted in ONET, in this case, supply chain manager, which lists the knowledge and skills and abilities that you would need to be successful. There's also a section on personality and what these types of jobs need to do. And then also on the technology you might use, any specialized software that you might use. And in this case, because it is around supply chain, maybe even some supply chain specific technology and skill sets that you would need to have. And it also provides information around education. And in this case, we put some information, since you have such a large support system for Boeing and BMW and a few other companies in the South Carolina upstate, we thought we would pull some South Carolina data for you as well. And then, of course, here's the national average again, and the fact that we expect to see an 8 to 10% increase. So this is ONET. It's a great piece of software. I began working with it back in the 1990s, actually 1999. Frank Gallo and Eileen Antonucci and a few of us worked with the Department of Labor, Commerce, and Education to build the system. And now the system pretty much runs with the help of some artificial intelligence. Any questions about ONET, you're more than welcome to talk to Dr. Cahill about. He'll be providing information, or you can send information to us and we can run more or less any job that you have. But we did select supply chain manager for the rest of the presentation, just as a way to help you understand what we're looking at. So let's jump into artificial intelligence, replacement or enhancement. I think this is the fear that people have, is that artificial intelligence just like Skynet is going to come in and take over and control us and do everything that us humans would like in one respect, but unfortunately control us in the other. As some of our friends like to joke, that may happen, but it's not going to happen this week or this year. So it's important to understand not how you're going to be replaced by artificial intelligence, but how in the supply chain industry, you're going to be able to leverage artificial intelligence to enhance what you do and better serve your stakeholders. So artificial intelligence as a workforce enabler, essentially, some people believe that 78% of the roles are already being impacted by artificial intelligence. Some people believe as high as 78%. Some people believe only about a third. But we do know that the World Economic Forum predicts that AI could lead to the displacement of 75 million jobs by 2024. We think that's entirely aggressive. If you, there are also people like Accenture and Gartner who are predicting that AI will actually create 10 million new jobs and change entire career paths. So bottom line is, yeah, some jobs may be eliminated, but for those who know how to leverage artificial intelligence, it can be quite an enhancement. We do predict, and we agree with the World Economic Forum as well as some others, we do predict that if a job is highly routinized, or has access to large data buckets, is highly regulated or standardized in some way, those jobs are more likely to be displaced by artificial intelligence than those that require a higher level of functioning. So you can almost think of it this way: if it's an analyst job or it's a heavy analytic job that is routinized, you're probably going to see more and more AI. If it requires creativity and thinking and reasoning and comparing, AI is going to be a little less impressive than our good old human beings. But we will see more and more changes in the supply chain related to how artificial intelligence is deployed. We're also going to see AI used in inventory optimization and shortage management. We're going to see automated workflows in a way that are streamlined and probably much more responsive than if they were managed by humans. We're also going to see decision-making and breaking down of silos between groups in the decision-making process. We're going to see more of that. And probably the reason we're going to see that breaking down is because it's going to be AI facilitating and extracting information and summarizing information instead of humans doing that. Now, is that going to happen tomorrow? Is that going to happen next year? It probably depends on the organization's technology sophistication and how fast they want to or how fast they have to move. You're also going to see it in the PFEP that we talk about more often than not here, where you will be able to take an analytical approach to looking at large amounts of data, future demand, supplier performance, vendor relations, all of that, where we look and try to create multiple scenarios. You're going to see a significant AI impact. Supply chain managers who understand it are going to be able to use the algorithmic approach and some machine learning to better size inventory and better predict success using even databases like NOAA and weather system data. Essentially, this is going to replace those spreadsheets that many of us have seen for the past for our whole careers, really. And so that is something that people are going to be concerned about, is how much of that is going to enable workforce development and workforce improvement. I prefer to think of AI as a tool that supply chain managers will use. Again, not displacing them, but helping them make better decisions. Now, it could be that the supply chain manager becomes more of a manager of process and technology than manager of people, but the AI is going to significantly improve how we make decisions by recognizing patterns quicker, learning from experience, and using rule-based or either machine learning algorithms to adapt and improve over time. We're going to see AI applied to demand forecasting, inventory management, and optimization. And I think supply chain managers are going to use these 3 specific areas to really identify the impact and why we need AI to be leveraged. Demand forecasting, essentially, we're going to see a more accurate picture of what the demand is. We're going to be able to identify supply chain changes quicker. We're going to get a more accurate picture. Walmart's already using this to forecast much of their how they stock a store, how they order product, and their AI systems are looking even at social trending data to determine, how can they reduce waste and improve their ability to meet customer demand quicker, and make sure that customers can find what they need to. Supply chain managers are also going to be able to use the AI algorithms to determine what the optimal inventory is, to forecast a product and ensure there's enough stock on hand. Amazon has been using AI-powered inventory management for a while now, and they are the best at it. But many of our clients and many of the people that we're already supporting are very close to being at that Amazon level, which means that our supply chain managers have to be able to support them in that. Optimization is the other place that you're going to see supply chain managers involved in utilizing AI. Everything from optimizing routes to reducing time and costs associated with getting goods from one place to another and storing those goods. Everything including production schedules and how products are produced and shipped in the most efficient manner. The example we have here is PepsiCo, how they use it. They can tell you from the time they order ingredients to the time they put those ingredients to use, to producing the product, putting it on a plane or a ship or a boat or a truck. Their level of efficiency would not even be dreamed of just a decade ago. So supply chain managers can definitely use this technology to be more effective, but is AI going to replace supply chain managers? The answer is a resounding no. Supply chain managers will not be made obsolete. AI can't outperform or out-adapt human thinking or creativity. AI can't really act in a crisis as well as a human, because humans have intuition and experience and knowledge, and whether it's a pandemic or a hurricane or a crisis or a flood or a fire or some significant issue on the open seas, humans will always be able to act better than the AI in managing when a routine is not a routine. Now, Bob will tell you that the supply chain managers aren't obsolete, but he wanted me to make sure that we said not yet. And I think, with a little humor there, I think what he's trying to say is, we have to think about how to best serve our customers, how to best take care of our employees during a time of change. But we also need to be aware that This is like the third or fourth, maybe fifth industrial revolution, where new equipment changes the way we farm, but we still have to farm and feed people. And I think that's what we're going to see with how artificial intelligence is applied in the supply chain. So we're still going to need farmers. We're still going to need supply chain managers. They're just probably going to manage less people and more data analysis, again, utilizing AI to identify trends and better predict options and better make decisions. I think you're also going to see that supply chain managers are going to be more strategic than operational. When you're managing that number of people and trying to manage schedules and production and delivery and transportation, often you get focused on what's in front of you, and that's a less strategic, more operations focus. AI is going to give supply chain managers an opportunity to be more strategic partners to our clients and to our internal customers, and it's also going to make that function more focus on strategic initiatives and not so much routine analysis, because again, the AI will be doing that routine analysis. And it is going to require, and we need to plan this into our development approaches for our employees, especially as we think about the supply chain managers we are going to promote and hire in the future. Essentially, they're going to have to be exposed to data analytics, machine learning, and programming skills, just to name a few. And they're going to have to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to equipping their colleagues, their peers, and their customers to work alongside artificial intelligence and not fear it, and certainly not see it as a competitor. So we come to the end of our presentation, and it's really up to you. Artificial intelligence is already in the supply chain. It's going to continue to impact the supply chain workforce. Will it be a replacement? Will it be an enhancement? That's, again, up to you. Our recommendation, and you'll see it in the briefing book as well as the additional materials we provided, we have a good process for what you might want to think about for your future training and development needs. We also think there's some universities and technical colleges throughout the state of Florida that you can partner with to redesign your education systems, your internal education systems. And you also might want to look at some of the success in supply chain that we're seeing in South Carolina, Southern California, and up and down, really, the seaboard. And so as we move forward, if you have any questions, I hope you'll feel comfortable reaching out to us. Bob and Terry will be available to answer your questions by email. And you can always reach me and of course, Susan has all of our information there. I believe my email is actually there on the website. So thank you for entrusting us with your resources. Thank you for letting us advise you. We only do well when we serve you well. So if you have questions and if you have other needs, please let us know. In the briefing book, even though we only focus on the supply chain manager here, in the briefing book, we did go through the other 13 job categories identified by ONET to break those down as far as KSAs. But the reality is, 3 years from now, I think those 13 roles will be combined into probably 5, and those 5 will be using artificial intelligence to help you manage your supply chain. Thank you.